Welcome to the deep dive. Have you ever looked at, say, two totally different animals and noticed they share a feature that looks strikingly similar? Maybe wings or fins.
hmm
And you wonder, does that similarity mean the same thing in nature? Are they built from the same blueprint?
It's a great question, and honestly, it gets right to the heart of understanding evolution. Because, yeah, surface similarities can be, well, quite misleading.
So how do biologists cut through that?
Well, we basically use two key concepts to classify these kinds of resemblances: analogous traits and homologous traits.
Okay, analogous and homologous.
Right. And there's actually a kind of surprising method scientists often use to tell which is which. It's pretty clever.
Interesting. Okay, let's tackle the first one then. Analogous. What defines that when things just look similar?
Exactly. Analogous traits are like nature having the same good idea twice, completely independently. They serve a common function, solve a similar problem. But they evolved on totally separate branches of the evolutionary tree. Think of them as different inventions for the same purpose. They aren't fundamentally the same organ in terms of ancestry.
Okay, so the classic example people use is wings, right? Like a bird's wing compared to a bee's wing.
Perfect example. Both are for flight, obviously. They have certain similarities needed for flight, like being flat and broad.
Yeah.
But structurally, totally different origins. A bird's wing is a modified arm, basically.
Right.
It has bones inside, feathers on the outside.
Uh-huh.
A bee's wing, it's an outgrowth of its exoskeleton. It's mostly membrane. They both achieve flight. But the evolutionary path to get there, the underlying structure, is completely different.
So same job, different toolkit entirely. Got it. That makes sense for analogous.
Precisely. Functionally similar, but ancestrally distinct.
So then what's the other side of that coin? The homologous traits.
Right, homologous. Now here we're talking about structures that do share a common evolutionary origin. They descend from a structure that was present in a common ancestor.
Ah, okay. So this is about shared family history, essentially.
Exactly. And the key thing is, this shared ancestry is reflected in their underlying structure. Even if their current function is wildly different, they are, in a deep sense, the same organ, just modified.
Okay, so give me an example of that.
Yeah.
Something that shows shared ancestry despite different uses.
Well, think about the wing of a bat and, say, the front leg of a horse.
Wow. Okay. One for flying, one for running. Couldn't seem much more different in purpose.
Right. Very different jobs. But if you look at the bone structure, both are modifications of the forelimb that was present in the ancestor of all mammals. They have a similar pattern of bones, one upper bone, two lower bones, then wrist bones, then digits.
Even though they look so different externally?
Even though the proportions are different, sure, and some bones might be fused or reduced, but that fundamental pattern, that architecture, is the giveaway. It points to their shared origin.
So it's like evolution took the same basic toolkit from the ancestor and adapted it for flying in bats and running in horses.
You got it. Shared ancestry, different function. That's homology.
Okay, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
So similar looks can mean different origins, that's analogy, and different looks can hide a shared origin, that's homology.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes you look twice at things. So how do biologists actually tease these apart in practice, especially when things get tricky? What's that clever method you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, that's where the real detective work comes in. Biologists look closely at the overall structure, how the organ develops in the embryo, things like that.
Okay, the development process. That makes sense.
But the really cool, maybe counterintuitive trick, they often focus on the features that seem the least important functionally, the most useless properties, you could say.
Useless properties, you mean like bits that don't actually do anything obvious?
Exactly. Think about a tiny bump on a bone that doesn't anchor a muscle, or a specific pattern of blood vessels that seems kind of irrelevant to how the organ works now.
Why focus on the useless stuff? That seems backward.
Because those non-functional similarities are incredibly powerful clues. Think about it. If two different species independently evolved a structure for the same function, they'd likely optimize the functional parts.
Right, makes sense.
But why would they independently evolve the same useless detail? There's no selective pressure for that. So if you see a shared trait that serves no apparent purpose,
It's probably leftover baggage from a common ancestor.
yeah,
It wasn't evolved independently, it was just inherited.
bingo. It's a fingerprint of shared ancestry, a sign of homology, not just analogy driven by function. Those seemingly trivial details are often the key to unlocking the true evolutionary story.
Wow. That is clever, focusing on the junk to find the treasure.
Sort of, yeah. It helps distinguish shared history from simply arriving at a similar solution independently.
So stepping back then, understanding this difference analogy versus homology,
Yeah.
it's not just about putting labels on things, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. It's fundamental to how we reconstruct the entire tree of life. It allows us to see the deep connections between organisms that look incredibly different.
Like knowing your hand and a whale's flipper are, deep down, the same structure.
Exactly. They're homologous. Recognizing that connects us and whales back through millions of years to a common mammalian ancestor, it reveals the pathways evolution has taken. It's about understanding life's history, not just its current appearance.
It really changes how you view the natural world. So the big takeaway is, analogy means similar function, different origin. Homology means shared origin, even if the function is different now.
That's the core of it. And knowing that difference lets you appreciate the sheer ingenuity and sometimes the historical constraints of evolution.
Definitely. So a final thought for you listening. Next time you notice a striking similarity between two different creatures, pause and think. Is it analogy or homology? And maybe ask yourself, what seemingly useless feature might actually hold the key to its real ancestral story? It's a fascinating puzzle out there.